left religion, church, and fundamentalist denominations, I noticed something. Christians believe in a lot of ludicrous, ridiculous things. Things like demonic possession, faith healing, miracles, virgin births, and men being resurrected or never dying. If anyone said these things outside of religion, they would be called a moron, a delusional fool, or clinically insane. But for some reason, politics and religion gets a pass. It is utter ridiculous, the things I remember being taught in Christianity. The idea that men could come back to life, that somebody who's never had sex, who's never been a surrogate, could become pregnant. A lot of the things in the Bible just are ridiculous. You have to dispense with critical thinking and common sense to believe these things. And people might be offended and leave very nasty comments, because every time someone comments in the comment section a negative thing, it's always a Christian for some reason. Occasionally I'll get a friendly atheist or somebody who just doesn't care. But every single time someone leaves me a negative comment in the comment section, it's a Christian. And I delete comments that are rude and insensitive. And people get very violently angry when you laugh at the utter ridiculousness that people believe in. Now, I don't go around laughing at people. I don't make fun of people, because I used to be one of these crazy religious freaks who believed everything I was told and acted like a genuine absurdity. And when I say that it's absurd, I'm talking from a scientific and critically believable standpoint. If anybody outside of religion said that somebody got pregnant through a virgin birth, we would be laughing at them. If anyone said they were resurrected, we would be laughing. If anyone said that they were God and came to save the sins of the world, we would put them in an asylum or take them to a professional to be evaluated for psychosis. But for some reason, you say Jesus and everyone thinks you're sane. I have met some extremely loony religious people. But I've also met completely sane people who believe in delusional myths. And don't get me wrong, believing in delusions is not the same thing as being delusional. I've taken psychology classes. I know the difference. Delusional is when you interpret unprovable, unbelievable, and downright stupid things as fact, gospel, doctrine, and faith. That's delusion. Delusions are what you believe. Delusional are the people who believe it. There's a very big difference. And you can be perfectly sane and live a happy life and be delusional. You don't have to slip into psychosis or suffer from dementia precox to be delusional. Some of the most delusional people I've ever met in my life were Christians. If anybody walked off the street and said, "I've seen a miracle," most people would think they're crazy. If somebody said that somebody died for somebody and that they've taken the sins of the world on their shoulders, people would call them delusional. And no, I don't have to prove that a virgin can't have a baby. It's just common knowledge. It's impossible. It's like going to bed thinking I'm going to wake up and be anything but a white, Caucasian, cis, heterosexual person that I am, and expecting to wake up and be an African American man. It's not going to happen. Not unless you have surgeries and extensive plastic surgery, like Michael Jackson. It's just not going to happen. And yet people in religions believe things that outside of religious belief, people would call them crazy. People who followed Marshall Applewhite in the 70s, 80s, and 90s believed that aliens were going to land and that they would beam up to spaceships. And people would call them crazy for believing that. Christians would call them crazy that they would be called up into a spaceship. The people said they were crazy. These people believe that Jesus is coming back on a white horse. How is that any more crazy or less crazy than a spaceship? The difference is, people haven't believed in aliens for 2,000 years. There isn't a book written that proclaims aliens to be the saviors of the world, like Jesus is considered to be. And what happened to the people who thought they were going to beam up to the spaceship? Well, in a way, they did beam up to the spaceship to start their new lives. It just wasn't an alien spaceship. It was a coffin. If you ever heard of the death cult Heaven's Gate, that's what I'm talking about. Believing that Jesus is going to come back or the alien ship is going to hover over your head and go up into a spaceship. Those things are very similar. We call it the rapture. But what makes Jesus' rapture more credible and more sane sounding than aliens beaming you up into a spaceship? They're both just as crazy. The only difference is one has 2,000 years of faithful followers. The other has about 25 years. But at the end of the day, we call it the persecution complex or Armageddon for a reason. Every religion has their own version of Armageddon, the end of the world. It's either an apocalypse, the world is going to split open, it's going to explode. Every culture had their own version of the end of the world. Every myth, every legend, every group of people have their own version of creation, gender. They have myths of how everything from the Tigris to the Euphrates came into being. Why are parables and myths about Jesus any more credible than Greek mythology, where Zeus turned into a tree or turned into an alligator? Jesus could turn things into wine. He could turn dead people living, according to the Bible. How is that any different from Greek mythology or Sumerian folk tales? The only difference is Christianity had massive political and powerful backing. And at some point, Greek mythology was as widely worshipped, understood, and followed as Christianity is now. The only difference is the Greeks aren't in charge. And Christianity has only survived because one Roman emperor, Constantine, in the 8300s, made it the legal religion of the Roman Empire. He did it for political reasons. He did it to get rich, to gain more property, and to solidify his power. If Constantine had decided to go with Buddhism or poly worship, like the Greeks and Romans did, Christianity would probably no longer exist, or it would be as popular as a very obscure religion in Asia. Even though Hinduism and Buddhism are considered in the top 5 world religions, there are dozens of Asian, European, and African religions that very few people, compared to Christianity, consider themselves in that group. If Christianity had not been backed by powerful Catholic kings, power-hungry Romans, or greedy church and social conditioning, Christianity would be no more popular than Taoism. Even though Taoism has an extreme backing of loyal followers, I'm pretty sure Taoism doesn't try to control the government or shame women anywhere, not even close to how Christians shame people. Every religion is a way for people to control themselves and other people. Some religions are just nicer about it than others. Some will actually kill you if you choose not to follow. It's called Sharia law. And the Christianity I grew up in, and this was the 2000s and 2010s. This was before MAGA, before what we know as modern Christian nationalism. I grew up in Baptist churches and fundamentalist, extreme versions of Christianity. They love biblical law because it gives men privilege and subjugates and forces women to be afterthoughts. White heterosexual men, they love Sharia law. They would give their lives to erect it into law in America. It's called a theocracy. The only difference is they don't like the brown-skinned version of Sharia law. That's not me saying it. That's what hetero religious Christians say. They love Sharia law. They just don't like that it's not a white man's law. They villainize Muslims and Islamic people. We call it Islamophobia. But they love Muslim law. They love the idea of stoning women, killing innocent people. They just change it to be the Torah instead. And the Torah was brutal to women, insensitive to strangers. But at the end of the day, religion is all about how it can benefit the heterosexual, cis, privileged men of the day. At one point, that was olive-skinned people, the Jews. When they ceased to be the world power, the Babylonians were in charge. Then the Greeks, the Romans, and then a lot of different people became the leaders. At some point, England became a world power. It's all about religion. Anywhere that became a huge world power had their own extreme version of male-centered law. That's why I don't trust religion, and I will never turn my back on it. I don't believe in miracles. I don't believe in myths. I find Greek and Roman mythology much more interesting than the Bible could ever be. Why? Because Greek mythology doesn't swear at me, doesn't condemn me to hell, doesn't say I'm a whore, doesn't set people against each other with the us versus them mentality. Greek mythology may view women as property, but at least women usually get saved or lived to tell the tale about it. Not true with the Bible, usually. There are many female Greek heroes in Greek mythology. And every group of people on the planet have their own version of why they're special. And don't get me wrong, every group is special. They're unique. They're necessary. They bring something to the table that's positive. But like every group, they always bring something negative. Well, potentially negative. And like I say, this generation, this group of people may persecute other people. 80 years later, they may be the ones being persecuted. Exhibit A, the Israel. 80 years ago, they were enduring the Holocaust. 80 years later, they're now bombing Palestinians. Every group of people are capable of committing awful acts of depravity. But they can also be capable of doing amazing architecture and progressing the law and the arts. So it's not all of them. Even when a group of people do a lot of bad things, it's never all of them. It's just the people in charge or the majority of people that do good or do bad. And it's a choice. Just because parts of the Bible have been proven to be true, like dates, events, locations, cities, individuals have been proven to have existed, lived, and done something, doesn't make it a holy book, infallible, or God's chosen words. If that were true, every history book that is factually accurate would be divine. Every classic that's set in places that have been proven to exist, where the characters really did exist and do things. Most books that are based on real people who did amazing things and lived in amazing places, all those would be infallible. Why does one book get treated with special conditioning, while other books that meet the same criteria aren't seen as divine? The Bible is a historical book. That doesn't mean it's factual, accurate, infallible, or have any bearing in how we interpret law and how we interpret morality. I don't take morality tips from a book that tells you how long to wait before you force a woman to marry you. I don't take morality tips or parenting advice from a book that says you're to stone a child who's rebellious. If that were true and moral, most teenagers would be stoned. I don't take morality tips from a book that tells women that if you can't prove your virginity, you are to die. Any book that's obsessed about sex and purity and just, in my opinion, being boring, that's a sin. I grew up in an environment where you had to be so pure, holy, and obsessed with Jesus. That was your personality. And having the Jesus personality is miserable. You're not happy. You're so obsessed with your own purity and thoughts, you can't enjoy living today. You can't enjoy and feel safe in your own skin. Miracles, myths, and beliefs are not fact. There's no such thing as miracles. There are such things as beliefs, but that doesn't make it a fact. You can believe the world is flat all day long and that there isn't gravity. And yes, I have met people that didn't believe in gravity or that the world they thought was flat. Those people do exist. They're stupid, but they do exist. Having a belief doesn't make it good, true, or reliable. I would rather hold Greek mythology in higher standing and enjoy it more than I ever will a book like the Bible that has killed 200 million people. It's not worth it. And I'm not saying it's wrong to read the Bible any more than it's wrong to read the Torah for historical and educational exposure. You cannot call the Bible divine without seeing everything else as inferior. The Bible is not a good standard for morality. It's good for men, but it's not good for women. And men especially are hurt by biblical law. The patriarchy hurts men. It hurts women more and with more devastating results. But it hurts everybody. I don't care what people believe. Just don't take away minorities' rights, leave the non-straight people alone, and live your life. And if your whole identity is wrapped up in which myth, which god, which book you read, get a life. Or find an island somewhere where you're not going to bother anybody. I'm tired of being around people who actually believe a donkey talked. There's a lot of people in religion that have undiagnosed mental disorders. And if you believe in something, that cannot happen. Donkeys don't talk. Men don't get resurrected. Virgins don't have kids. If you believe those things are true, you're delusional. It may be passive delusion, but it's delusional. There are no demons. There are no possessions. There is no spiritual warfare going on. Gravity is going on. Starvation is going on. And Trump doing stupid things is going on. But there is no spiritual war. And if your priorities are spiritual warfare and keeping women from having abortions instead of healing, helping, feeding, and protecting innocent, vulnerable people, you have screwed up priorities. And I don't want to know you. Don't want you on my porch either. Christians' priorities are all screwed up. My parents care more about their religion, their beliefs, instead of making sure I'm okay. I came out to my family 7 weeks ago. Only one person made sure I was okay. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't the two siblings I lived with for 25 years. It was my oldest brother, who's 15 years older than me, who goes to a progressive church and is probably the only type of Christian that doesn't set my teeth on edge. He and his wife made sure I was okay and texted me to find out if I wanted to talk about it. My parents haven't said a word about it. And at the end of the day, if you're going to ghost the person who came out of your body and ignore when that person tells you 10 years ago that they were depressed, suicidal, or that they are now an atheist, and you don't deal with it, you don't make sure that person's okay, that they're thriving, that they're happy, being a Christian does not make a difference. The meanest people I've ever met, in person or on the internet, were Christians. The nicest people were atheists and people from Asian religions. Very friendly, very kind. It's not Christianity, though. I have not met 5 Christians in my life, and I've traveled North America, that were friendly, non-judgmental, kind. You can say you're a Christian all day long, but if you ghost somebody who comes out, you treat them like a pariah. You gaslight them. You make their childhood a living hell. you're not a good person. And Christian doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't. What you say is meaningless if your actions show that you have nothing but contempt for the different ways to live your life. You're not a good person. And the holidays are hard for people like me. People who've come out for different reasons or different expectations. But at the end of the day, if religion can't control you, then they see you as a threat. God forbid somebody feels safe in their own skin and wants to embrace who they are. I don't want to be around people who view miracles as proof of God's existence. If God really does exist, I don't think he does, but if he does, he is the worst manager I have ever seen. The worst. Who would create this world and not do something about it? And any person who puts people in charge knowing that they are 95% most likely to be awful human beings, and I'm talking about heterosexual men, you are a monster. If God was loving, he would have put women in charge, not men. But God doesn't exist. The Bible and the way Christians believe about God proves he doesn't exist. No God that sadistic, cruel, and just miserable could exist. Luckily, he doesn't. And I found that atheists are so compassionate. Much, much more, leaps and bounds, more than Christians can ever hope to be. Christians have some of the most screwed up priorities I have ever seen. I don't want to be friends with religious people. And I'm sure there are nice religious people out there. I just want anything but whatever that is. If I want to believe in mythologies, beliefs that are wacko or just plain ridiculous, I would put on a movie like Pan's Labyrinth or The Never-Ending Story. If anyone believed that certain places like Narnia was real, we would lock them up in a loony bin. But for some reason, if you believe in this God, you're not crazy. It doesn't make sense. And, at the end of the day, people are only as delusional as what they want to be. And it's all about what makes you comfortable and what benefits you. That's religion. I just don't want that. I have nothing making me be compassionate and care about people. There's no threat of heaven or hell hanging over my shoulder. But I'm more likely to help people because I'm an atheist. And that's just the consistent reality I live in. And going into Christmas, I don't need to make Christ into Christmas. Christmas existed 1,000 years before Jesus ever showed up, if he ever did. Christmas is a pagan holiday that has been repackaged, regifted, and recreated so many times. The Christmas we have now didn't exist 200 years ago. Christmas has been made illegal by pilgrims and Puritans. It's very different. Religion controls. Religion believes outlandish, delusional things. And the amount of mental gymnastics required to believe it is unbelievable.